I have been eagerly waiting for episode 6 of The Acolyte. As a fan of the Star Wars universe, it really adds a layer of depth to the character developments. We go a lot deeper into these characters and make a really, really deep connection in with them. In this episode, Jedi Master Sol and Osha, we see battling with internal as well as external threats. Can episode 6 of The Acolyte kick on from episode 5 and keep us all entertained? The galaxy teeters on the edge of chaos as dark forces grow stronger within the shadows of the High Republic. With the dust now settled, the Sith Lord has taken Osha into hiding on an unknown planet. Meanwhile, the Jedi Order is playing catch-up on the tragedy that's taken place, while May is pretending to disguise herself as her sister in order to draw out the truth of the past from Jedi Master Sol. The episode heightens the stakes as alliances are tested and the threat of betrayal looms large. Osha's struggle between her Jedi teachings and her sister's influence brings emotional depth and conflict. The Acolyte continues to explore the origins of the Sith's resurgence, revealing hidden dangers and the internal conflicts within the Jedi ranks. Now, episode 6 for me was a different type of good, which is built more around the character development. And we get to see a lot of internal struggle here in this episode. It's not necessarily going along the lines of lightsaber battles, but it's the other side of the coin where we're really getting a connection into those characters, and we're getting to witness all of that and be crafted on a one-on-one basis, but also in the different relationships that are now starting to unfold. We're seeing the Sith coupled with Osha, we're seeing May coupled with Jedi Master Sol, and then we're getting Jedi Master Venestra and her Padawan, along with the other Jedis, now starting to come into the fold. And what's really highlighted in this episode is the internal struggle that is taking place. We're seeing a lot of emotion packed into this episode. But the only thing that I'd probably challenge with this is that when we saw Revenge of the Sith and we saw that struggle that Anakin had to go through, we didn't quite get to witness that in this episode. The one thing that I do think they've done well in this episode is not use it as an opportunity to be a filler episode. They've used episode 5 and built on from it. And I think that's a really good thing to see. And it makes it all that more enjoyable. I know we have had a little bit of a turbulent start in the series, but I do think that they've done the right thing in taking episode 5 and kicking on with episode 6. And now we've got episodes 7 and 8 until we conclude the series. And I think they'll keep a level of consistency threaded throughout the rest of those 2 episodes. For me, the reason I was so hooked to episode 6 was not because of the action like I was in episode 5, but actually because we get to see a lot of unexpected development in the characters. And we also get to start to see certain relationships start to be formed that are unexpected. And this made it a different type of viewing experience in comparison to episode 5. Now in this episode, we're roughly getting 39 minutes of Star Wars intrigue. Now for the storyline for episode 6, I've sort of broken it up into 3. You've got what's going on with May and Jedi Master Sol, where May has assumed the identity of her twin sister Osha, and she's trying to continue her assassination attempts on key Jedi Masters that she's targeting. But what's interesting is she's sort of playing with Jedi Master Sol and wanting him to admit to what he's done wrong, as well as trying to sort of start to get the truth out of him, this secret that he's been holding on to for all these years. And then you've got Osha. She's been kidnapped by the Sith Lord, and the Sith Lord is actually trying to seduce her to the dark side. And throughout the episodes of this series, we've sort of come into the knowing, slowly but surely, drip-fed information into the reasoning behind why she is no longer a Padawan learner to her Master Sol. And that internal struggle in this episode is starting to come to the surface, and we're seeing all of that emotion now come out in this episode, but not in its entirety, slowly but surely. And I think that's going to feed into episode 7. And then the final part of the storyline for me is what's happening with the Jedi Order. They get a distress call from Jedi Master Sol, so they're constantly on the back foot in this episode, and they're playing catch up to try and connect the dots with what's happened. The thing for me that was really interesting was with Jedi Master Venestra. I personally get a vibe that she knows more than she's letting on. Now for me, the show in its entirety now that we've got episode 6, is now starting to show connectivity into all of the different episodes of the series. And what's really clear that we're starting to see now is that character development and how that's tying into the overarching story arc for the entire series. And what's really starting to pump excitement around the remaining episodes of the series is this mystery and secret that Jedi Master Sol has been sitting on. And that, I think, we're now going to see in episode 7, because it's sort of been teed up in episode 6 with his interaction between May. Now, for me, Disney have done the right thing here by building on what was a good episode in episode 5 into episode 6 and not allowing episode 6 to be just a filler episode. And there were 2 really cool things that I liked from this episode. One was the Sith's backstory. I like the depth that is built around the Sith Lord. It's not too much detail, but it's not too little detail. And the second thing that's really cool that I was quite surprised about was the twist with Osha. We know that she's going through this internal struggle. We know the reasons that she's left the Jedi. And what's interesting is that all of that internal struggle that she's going through is now coming to the surface. We're seeing it. And that Sith Lord is either very smart or he's being portrayed in a very different way to what we're usually used to seeing in the Star Wars universe when we think of the Sith Lord associated to the dark side of the Force. Now, episode 6 for me was good, but in a different type of way. Episode 5 was all about action taking place, whereas episode 6 gives us something different. We're actually getting a more meaningful episode with regards to the characters. And the reason I like that is because it's allowing the audience to make that closer connection into the characters. And in getting close to the characters, we're also seeing polar opposite types of reactions from those characters. When I think about Jedi Master Sol, we're seeing a completely different side to him, where he's getting really emotional about certain things that have taken place in the previous episode. We're seeing the internal struggle from Osha now start to come out to the surface, and we're seeing that being portrayed. And we're also getting the backstory to the Sith Lord and how they came to be, as well as the motivations and objectives that are driving them forward. Now, there are some lingering questions here for me. Who was the Sith Lord's master? Are Osha and May's paths about to change? And does Jedi Master Venestra know more than she's letting on? Now, the stars of the show are Lee Jung-jae as Jedi Master Sol, Amanda Steinberg as Osha and May, Rebecca Henderson as Jedi Master Venestra, and they who shall not be named, the Sith Lord. Now, the ones to watch for me are Jedi Master Sol, Osha, May, the Sith Lord, and Jedi Master Venestra. The one to watch out of the ones to watch, hands down, and yet again, will be the Sith Lord. And the reason I say that is because we're now starting to get closer to that character. It's no longer who is the person behind the mask. We now know who that person is, and we're now starting to get the backstory as to how they came to be, what their objectives are, and why their objectives are that they want a Padawan, and what their motivations behind wanting a Padawan is. And the other reason is that we are witnessing something that we've not really witnessed before. We're seeing a completely different side in all forms, whether it's character development, the portrayal of the Sith Lord, even the visual and cinematography that is aligned to this character in this series is not really what we would associate with a Sith Lord. It's a more gentler approach as opposed to engulfed emotion when we think of the dark side. And I would also have to say that Osha comes in at a very close second, because I feel like there's a plot twist coming where Osha is now being strung along into bringing those emotions to the surface and switch allegiance to join the dark side. Now, we really do get to see a lot of character development in this episode, and it adds a lot of depth which carries through the storyline. Lee Jung-jae acting as Jedi Master Sol, we see a completely different side to him. We see a very, very emotional Sol, and that's not really the Jedi way. I mean, any normal human being, after seeing a tragedy take place of that magnitude, I mean, I'd think there's something wrong with them if they didn't react how he reacted, and I think maybe he actually underreacted. But in the grand scheme of things, for the Jedi, we're seeing it, and it's completely out of character for a Jedi Master. The other interesting thing is that he clearly wants to get this secret or this mysterious plot twist that's about to unfold out onto the table. And that's why he has done what he's done with May in this episode, and he is ready to divulge that information, which makes episode 7 quite exciting to wait for. And now when it comes to Amandla playing both Osha and May, I think we're going to be in for a real surprise in episode 7 with both characters. As May has assumed her sister's identity, we're now starting to see her wanting to continue that assassination attempt on Jedi Master Sol and complete her mission. But what's interesting is that as Jedi Master Sol catches on to who she really is, he is now teeing up the exposure of his secret. And what's interesting is with May, you start to see that she wants to get a confession. She wants him to confess to whatever she is really angry at him about and the whole Jedi Order. And I think if Jedi Master Sol finally divulges this thing, this secret that he's been holding on to for all these years, might that sway her to forgive him? Because we did see elements of her sort of start to forgive and have closure, knowing that what she was doing was wrong. And that might sway her, I think, to then journey back to the light. With Osha, we've got a completely different kettle of fish. This is teed up and got dark side written all over it. The Sith Lord is either playing a really good game, or we are genuinely seeing a different side of the dark side. And whatever he is doing is bringing all of those emotions out of Osha to the surface. And we're seeing her express herself with elements that you'd associate emotion to the dark side. And I have a funny feeling we are going to see the biggest plot twist in her changing allegiances. Now, they who shall not be named as the Sith Lord is a great thing that Disney have done here in bringing us closer to that Sith Lord. We get to witness a portrayal of a Sith Lord like something that we've never seen before. When you think of Palpatine, Darth Vader, Darth Maul, everything about their portrayal is completely in line with the stereotype. You get to see emotions aligned that you'd associate with the dark side. You get to see their genuine nature immersed in the dark side. And you also get to see the visual and cinematography coupled in with that connects your thought process to what you would think the dark side would be associated to. Whereas in this episode, you're seeing a genuine person being developed, and you're not seeing the visual and cinematography associate that with the dark side of the Force. You're actually seeing light and gentle elements and mannerisms from that Sith Lord. Now, the thing that I can't quite figure out yet is this Disney showing us a portrayal of the early stages of a Sith Lord, or is it that we're seeing a very conniving and clever Sith Lord that is acting in this way to lure Osha to become his apprentice, which is aligned to his objectives? But either way, it's a good portrayal because it still aligns to that of which you associate a Sith Lord with, which is a Sith Lord is always looking for an apprentice. We've seen that with Palpatine wanting Anakin, and there's real purpose and conviction behind what this Sith Lord is doing, but just doing it in a slightly gentler way when he's away from the battlefield. Now, for me, it feels like Disney have capitalized on episode 5, not making episode 6 a filler episode. Saying that though, I do feel that they could have gone a little bit further with Osha. When we saw Anakin going through that challenging time internally and it coming to the surface and him eventually joining the dark side, we got to see so much packed into that performance. But saying that, I think that it's very early stages for Osha, and will probably, if she does make that transition and shift to the dark side, we'll probably see that come out in episode 7 or 8. So I might be getting a little ahead of myself at this stage. So for me, with episode 6, this was a good build on from episode 5, where there was a ton of action. But with episode 6, it all revolves around the in-depth character development that we get to see. And I think Disney have done a good job by not letting the good work that they did in episode 5 go to waste in episode 6. Now for me, there weren't a lot by way of visuals, but we do get a few interesting pieces. With the episode clearly being dedicated to the character development in this episode, we do get a few cool scenes. We get an unknown planet which Osha and the Sith Lord are hiding out on, and we do also get more in-depth insight into the spaceship of Master Sol. And the interesting thing about the Sith Lord's planet, the unknown planet that he's hiding out on and he's taken Osha as captive, is that it's not what you'd associate with the dark side. What Disney have done quite well here, interestingly enough, making it more enjoyable actually, is that it's actually the mood and lighting is all to do with the opposite. So instead of all really dark, really sort of cold, it's actually quite warm, elegant, clean, bright, that you'd associate with the Jedi. Now for me, this episode introduces something that's very different that I actually really enjoyed. We got an episode that was dedicated to the in-depth character development, bringing us closer to those characters. We see the Jedi Order playing catch-up, which says to me that they're a little bit rusty with all the peacetime that they've had away from any dark side encounters or resurgence. The Sith Lord challenging the stereotype of what we would typically associate with the dark side of the Force, which we've seen from the Star Wars universe in previous episodes and movies gone by, and a potential shift with Osha. Is she going to convert to the dark side? And then the icing on the cake is Sol, and this secret that he's been holding on for all this time, clearly. And he's about to divulge all of that information, either all in episode 7 or over the course of episode 7 and 8. Overall, I think the episode was enjoyable and insightful to watch. I think the plot and storyline have been teed up nicely for episode 7 and 8, coupling in big plot twists that I think will end up happening. The character development is a really intriguing one. There's in-depth analysis, in-depth insight. We get to bridge that gap and get really close to the characters and see those character arcs take a massive shift. With the visual and cinematography, they keep things pretty simple but powerful, challenging certain stereotypes that we associate things with. And I do think it was an enjoyable episode in a different type of way for us as the viewers to digest. And I'm actually quite excited for episode 7. I give episode 6 of The Acolyte a 3 out of 5 buckets, making it a binge watching 50-50. If you've been watching the show, what's your prediction for Osha? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Don't forget to smash a like if you enjoy, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and follow us on all social media channels to stay up to date with the latest content. I'm Matthew, this is Binge Watcher, thanks for binging with me.